Hi guys. So, yeah. Uh, if it wasn't for, of course, the fact that I needed to sleep because of work, like yesterday, and the fact that I was so exhausted when I beat this game. Oh boy. So, Sky 2. Alright, let me start off this review by saying Sky 2 is way better than, well, I shouldn't say way better, but it is absolutely better than Sky 1. You know, Sky 1 had issues, it had a decent story, but it had gameplay issues out the goddamn wazoo, right? The encounter design, the scaling X, all of that nonsense, right? But the one thing that made Sky 1 work, or in fact, I can just flip back to really see it, was was the soundtracks, the soundtrack, excuse me. Was the soundtrack, the orbment system, and yeah, it was all good stuff. Sky 2 still had some of the issues that plagued Sky 1. The enemies that will cast heals on themselves and shit like that. But the story really picked up the slack. See, in my blunt opinion, when a game is decent, if a game has a decent story but the gameplay frustrates me, I'm not going to want to play that game again. But if you have a really good story with some gameplay that frustrates me, I'm going to be able to tolerate that a hell of a lot more than I otherwise would, right? So, yeah. So, obviously, because this is a game that I went through, for the first time, my notes are, of course, linear. So that's my first page of notes. And then that's my second page of notes, with just a little bit on the top. So you might as well just say 2 pages of notes, because if you notice, there's a little bit of notes from Sky 1 up there. So let's just jump right into it. So the first thing we see in this game is Estelle wakes up after Joshua has, after the confession scene, Joshua leaves and all that stuff. And Estelle goes to try and find him and runs right into Cassius, who knew that Joshua is a former Ouroboros member. Now, Estelle freaks out about this, as she should. Let's just be blunt about that. See, Cassius knew, and knew that eventually he would, he might leave because of his connections to Ouroboros. And Estelle was never told that. Now that, which led to Estelle screaming in his face, "I hate you." Now there's something no parent ever wants their child to scream in their face now, isn't it? So, yeah. So, I don't even know why I'm looking at my notes. I didn't actually take any notes for this, because I knew I was just going to be able to talk about it. The funny thing about this is that that's not actually what changes Cassius's mind, turns Cassius's mind around to the point where he realizes, I've made a horrible mistake. No, that comes in when Shara walks in. It walks onto the scene as she overheard the conversation, and of course, because Estelle is effectively her little sister, she looks at him with a straight face and calls Cassius the worst man she's ever met. Ouch. Now, you might think, well, that's just one person's opinion, right? Well, let me put it to you this way. It's much harder. That a gut punch like that is a lot. Hurts a hell of a lot more when it's somebody that you care about, that you actually care about. And Shara, for all intents and purposes, well, I can't really speak to Cassius's mindset on this. I think it's safe to say that Cassius, at the very least, considers her effectively family. Whether it's a student master relationship or what, in some regard, I do think Cassius considers Shara family. So there's that. So then Estelle races off to go home because, hoping against hope that Joshua will be there. Now, the lore runner has talked many times about hope, the difference between hope fulfilled and hope unfulfilled, or as I like to call it, false hope and hope fulfilled. In other words, false hope is when you're hoping against hope about something, and either it's proven to be wrong, FF10 coming to mind immediately, or you have what happens here, where Estelle knew from the get-go that Joshua was not going to be at the Bright House, but hoped that she was wrong, hoped that that Joshua would be there. But of course he's not, because he's on the run. Well, I say on the run, but it's really, he's on the run from himself more than anything. We'll get into that later. And when Father Kevin shows up, did I write down anything about Father Kevin? Why the hell didn't I? Hey, that is so dumb of me. I mean, I wrote it down over here, I know that, but... Oh my god, the first note I wrote about Kevin was frickin' at the end. What the actual hell, Alex? Anyways. But no, then Father Kevin shows up, Kevin Graham. And he just kind of immediately starts hitting on Estelle. But credit where it's due, Kevin is an interesting character, and I thought so right from the beginning, because he sees that Estelle's in distress, and so he flirts a bit. But when he finds out that she's really kind of in dire straits, if you notice, he actually backs off a bit and just says, I'm willing to lend an ear if you need to. And then Estelle kind of opens up to him because, and in my opinion, I think it's just because she needed to talk to somebody about what had just happened with Joshua. In some capacity, she needed to just say something about it. I think that's why she opened up to Kevin. Now, Kevin ended up being trustworthy, so that tracked, but but Kevin was not only smart enough, but was also kind enough to just let her vent. And that, I think, more than anything, says all it needs to about Kevin's morality, right? If you're somebody like Weissman, well, spoilers, you're going to get a petrification dart that's going to turn you to dust. Have fun. But if you're just a normal person, or you just need a shoulder to vent to, well, that's what he likes to be. And considering he's part of the Gralsritter, yeah, that tracks. That tracks hard. Which is funny because This is actually the second. Let me walk that back. Third Ritter that I have encountered from my perspective. Because keep in mind, I didn't get through all of. This is my first time playing Sky 2. This is the first time Kevin's in the Sky games, and I played Cold Steel 1, 2, and 3 to completion before finishing Sky 1 and doing these videos. So. But Kevin just acknowledges Estelle, helps her out, and makes sure he stays within support range, is what I like to call that. That's actually why he doesn't go into the Bright House right away with Estelle. He just kind of lets her go through the house. But Kevin's not stupid, and he knows he knows that you know, it's a false hope scenario, which means Estelle's. Yeah. Anyways, so then Estelle effectively says that she's gonna go get Joshua back, but of course, because as she has decided I'm gonna go do this, that also leads her to the other side of the equation, which is she's not strong enough to take on Ouroboros herself. Well, let me walk that back. She's not powerful enough to really go toe to toe with Ouroboros, which is funny because in some ways you could argue she doesn't get to that point where she is an Ouroboros stopping, 1-1 army. But, but of course to flip that coin, I don't have my mirror coin in handy because of course I don't. Ah, here it is. You know, you know, so she's not exactly powerful enough to do that. But the flip side of that coin, is, I know you can't really see which side it is, which doesn't really matter. But the flip side of that coin, but the flip side of the coin is very simply, I've never been good at flipping coins, by the way. As I'm demonstrating. Anyways, the flip side of that coin is that, in my blunt opinion, no Trail's main hero is a match for Ouroboros. Now, I know how that sounds, so hear me out. I don't mean to say that the Trail's heroes suck. No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they are, well, they're basically like a Captain Kirk from Star Trek. Hear me out. I swear I'm going somewhere with this. See, Estelle, in my blunt opinion, would not get anywhere near as far as she does without her friends at her side, right? Her fellow bracers, Olivier, Tita, and especially Joshua, right? Without them, she won't really get very far. And actually, that's part of Joshua's character arc of realizing that he cannot stand alone. Which is funny because I actually have a line that one of my, character in my self-insert fanfiction actually says, if a man stands alone, he stands as a corpse. The idea behind the line basically meaning you need other people to rely on, right? Specifically, the character was a villain explaining to another villain the reason why he, okay, yeah, you're a pawn, but I'm not I'm not so amateur. I am actually enough of a chess master to understand the value of a pawn in chess, so to speak, right? Now, if you're not if you're not realizing what I mean, in chess, if a pawn gets all the way to the other end of the board, or there's literally a rule built in where that pawn upgrades, as in it promotes, as a class change if you prefer, right? And thus it goes up to another piece. It can turn into any piece other than the king. So effectively, you know, you will never get to this point, obviously, but there are 9 potential queens on that chessboard when you begin your chess game. Now, obviously, 9 is not going to be how many you freaking have by the time the game ends. You'll be lucky if you have 2. If you're really good, you might have 2, right? But you don't necessarily have to have, 9 in 9 queens. You could have 10 rooks, because you always start with 2 rooks. You could have 10 knights, 10 bishops. You get the point, right? You can upgrade to any other piece you want, and thus has the chess analogy of valuing pawns. Because, yeah, if you lose too many of your pawns, well, your options are now a lot more limited, because now your resources have been depleted more. You see how this works? You see how this ties in? And that's how the analogy breaks down. So Estelle would be nothing without her companions, her fellow bracers, and her and her other cohorts, and her other cohorts, specifically Olivier and Tita. And Lloyd would be nothing without the other members of the SSS, and Reen would absolutely be nothing without the rest of Class 7 backing his ass up. Which is funny, because that's actually his character arc. That's actually Reen's character arc in Cold Steel 3, where he kind of forgets that what made Class 7 work so well was, sure, he's the central focal point, but what the rest of Class 7 needed to realize was they're just as valuable to the puzzle as Reen is. At least that's my interpretation. Hence, and then you see how this ties into Kirk, because James T. Kirk is nothing without his crew. If he stands alone, well, he's not exactly going to accomplish much, is he? Right? He needs, he needs Spock. He needs Bones. He needs Scotty in the engine room, in engineering, in tinkering with it and making things work. He needs the piloting expertise of Sulu. Okay, admittedly, that one's not as abundant, but but again, he needs somebody like Sulu at the helm. He needs, Ahura for communications, and blah 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 blah. I keep going. Actually, I think I did mention everybody. Chekhov. Well, you know what? Even Chekhov is an additional support pillar. So there you go. But you get my point. Right? You need, Kirk needs that support structure, right? Because that's the entire point. If Kirk stood alone, he'd stand as a corpse. Especially considering how many times in TOS he apparently he's so willing to lay down his life for his crew. He does so almost without hesitation in, almost every episode of freaking season 1 of TOS. Jesus. Ugh. Anyways, moving on, moving on from that is ultimately the point, and that is what Joshua has to come to grips with in this game. That's his character arc, and is still kind of slowly realizing that she's not alone, and that's kind of her being her character arc. And that becomes true even as early as the prologue, as the prologue / chapter 1. I think it's the prologue, because the prologue is the Locke training ground. Can I just say I love the idea of this, that there's an entire training area specifically for this. And I like that Estelle goes there and for 3 months she trains and actually gets strong enough to the point where she can actually start, with her allies in tow, start standing up to Ouroboros because she stands up to Blue Blanc. She stands up to Blue Blanc. She doesn't do very well against Walter, admittedly, because Zinn has to show up, but stands up to Blue Blanc. Look, eventually manages to match up with, obviously with Zinn's help, match up with Walter, match up with, go toe to toe with Ren and Patermater. Help Shara deal with Lucy Ola, you know. It's very interesting to see the members of Ouroboros that we fight in this game, but I can cover them a bit later. So then we get the tutorial dungeon. Now this is a nice touch gameplay wise. Now we're finally touching on gameplay. I love the idea that excuse me. I love the idea that the game lets you skip tutorials if you know a whole bunch of them, right? Like skips the basics, movement, attack, arts, all of that nonsense is just skipped over, except for chain attacks. So in this game, you can actually chain up attacks. You have chain crafts. So you can actually team up with a couple of characters, or even all four. Like you and another character can team up, and then you can perform a chain attack. And then chain 2 is 3 of your party members, and then chain 3 is everybody, which is nice. It's actually a nice touch, and I like that. So then we head to Grand Cell Fortress for a test to simulate combat. In other words, what they do is what happens is a scenario comes up and it appears to be real, but just kidding. It was just your fellow it was just some other senior acers, pretending to be Jaegers in order to test you, which is really cool. So then you go ahead and you meet up with Sharon and now you have the choice of either pairing after some railroading, which is just you meet up with Shara again, and then you also meet up with Agate again. Now this is where you have the choice to either pair off with Shara or Agate. Now originally I was gonna go ahead and go through New Game Plus and get up to the point where it would be like, which honestly I'd blaze through because but Agate, so Agate shows up and he's like, hi, I'm here. I've mellowed out, and now then you get to choose, who goes with who. Does Estelle go with Shara or does Estelle go with Agate? Now the guide I was reading through, I was consulting because originally I was going to do a 100% playthrough. I abandoned that after a point. Basically recommended that Agate was the better choice early game. I, of course, went with Shara because I didn't like Agate in the first Sky game, so I had a bit of bias there. Now, I don't want to get into Agate too much yet, but it is apparent even from the early parts of the game that he has mellowed the fuck out. Okay, I mentioned this on stream, but my big problem with Agate in the first game was, okay, you have this sympathetic backstory. That doesn't excuse you being a fucking prick, okay? Because that is the shining definition of what I call Ava Asuka syndrome. In other words, I have this sympathetic backstory, I get better later. See, the problem is that I have a way to fix it. remove the arrogance. Have it be that instead of him basically staring down his nose at Estelle and Joshua in the first game for the entire game for no fucking reason, have him basically be the voice of reason in certain scenarios and temper it with a bit of experience and be like, well, you guys aren't that great right now, but eventually you'll get there, kind of a thing. But no, instead it's just you suck, the end. And the fact of the matter is in gameplay, as I mentioned in Sky 1, Agate was not pulling his weight. So I was looking at that going, I'm not bringing you along because you're not going to pull your weight. And then Agate started pulling his weight. when he eventually joined me again and I was forced to have him in the party, he was pulling his weight. Even though I had benched him for a while. I'd just like to point out that I brought Agate into the end game. God, the low fight. But in my defense, I had been neglecting Agate, and Agate is legit in this game. So I'll take this. I'll take my, I'll take righting a wrong over anything else. Uh. So then we move on to chapter 2. And this is where we start getting side quests. Now, this is an interesting thing because this was not in the first game. There are notes about fighting the side monsters, the quest monsters. There's little notes that warn you about different things that the monsters will do. That's a nice touch. I like that. It kind of just adds to the flavor, right? Excuse me. I still say we could have stayed to, actually know exactly where they are, but whatever. So then we get this ghostly figure, and that leads us to the old schoolhouse at Janus Military Academy. We meet up with Chloe again. Chloe ended up being one of my mainstays, funny enough. So Chloe and Olivier join us, and then Dorothy is also coming to check out the ghost stories, which is going to be important in a bit. And so we ended up encountering Blue Blanc, who is actually using a gospel because the gospels are effectively, well, they are effectively forms of super magic at this point. Or to be more accurate, they are advanced magic. Ancient magics that are very powerful and very deadly. See, the experiments with the gospels in this one allows Blue Blanc to effectively do shadow possession jutsu, which was done by one Shikamaru Nara in the series Naruto, if you're not familiar with it. Which is funny because Dorothy actually saves us from Blue Blanc in that. Now, Blue Blanc claims to be a chaser of beauty. I'm with Olivier. He doesn't actually. He's more of a narcissist. He's too much of a narcissist to be a true hunter of beauty, love and beauty, in my opinion. And that really kind of makes his characterization kind of bleh, in my opinion. But whatever. I would I don't understand why Olivier has to call him a rival when it is clear to everyone with two fucking brain cells to rub together that Olivier is the better hunter of love, but I digress. But regardless of any of that, the funny thing is that remember how I mentioned Dorothy was going to be important later because she shows back up. We meet up with her in this chapter. Yeah. By the way, the Dorothy being accompanying you was actually the point where I gave up on 100%ing because I had already screwed up because I didn't bring Dorothy with me for that one photo side quest. Yeah. Anyways, But Dorothy's camera, the flash from it, frees us from the shadow possession. I admittedly was laughing at that because it was just like, oh my god, that's awesome, right? Because it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, no, that's legit. That's cool. Because the big thing, the big thing with Blue Blanc is he is very narcissistic, and so it's just fitting that one of the most absent-minded characters in the whole series managed to defeat him with a camera. You know? Uh, but yeah. So then Blue Blanc moves on. Everybody gets right under Estelle's skin, by the way, by mentioning Joshua ever so often, which I suppose makes sense. So then we ran into the other thing that basically killed any desire for me to ever go through to 100% this playthrough, and that was the assault at the hotel. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'm just going to go because my note basically says it right off the bat. The hotel assault can fuck right off. That is literally my note, word for word. Heard. 3 exclamation marks, no less. See, the problem is Blue Blanc. We deal with Blue Blanc, and then immediately this side quest pops up, and it's just because it's a questioning. You have to go around and you have to question everybody, and you have to get some keywords. It's basically the ask and learn system from FF2, but imagine if the ask and learn system from FF2 was even worse than people say it is. Now, honestly, I don't think the ask and learn system is actually bad from FF2, but imagine if it was even freaking worse and you could actually, and you could actually get soft locked because you missed important stuff. Well, that's what happens here, and it's just crap. I had to literally reload my save because I was incapable of progressing because I had done something out of order and it was just not triggering what it was. Like I had the solution in the solution was right there and I knew what it was, but it wasn't going to let me continue. And that pissed me right the hell off. I hated that side quest so goddamn much. So, yeah. So then we go to Zeiss, and then we have to deal with the guild's sign being stolen. Which is funny because Blue Blanc then, so we get sent on a chase, yes, we find it, and yeah, it's ridiculous. We also meet up with Tita again, who ended up becoming my best party member. I don't know why, but she became my best party member. uh, and, I don't have anything to really say about the sign. It's just Blue Blanc messing with us. Blue Blanc will do that a lot. By the way, it's kind of his thing. Oh, by the way, we also meet up with Lieutenant Colonel Sid. So Sid got an upgrade because Cassius is now basically head of the military, which I like. That's a nice touch. So then in my playthrough, Tita, I get an Annalise. I'm probably butchering the name. Forgive me, but Estelle's training partner showed up, and so Tita asks if Annalise is Agate's girlfriend. I just couldn't help but laugh at that because I was like, oh my god. So apparently Tita ships it. Ah, yeah, you're girl after my own heart, her Tita. Your daughter material, abso-fucking-lutely. Oh my god, you are precious, must protect. Uh, uh. So then we start learning about the non. There's also the plot point about the non-aggression pact. As we head to Grand Seal, and we're dealing with threatening headers. Now I want to talk about the non-aggression pact because it is Queen Alicia. I'm butchering the name. The Queen, Chloe's grandmother, being really smart. She is effectively trying to protect her kingdom from anybody who may or may not want to, start up aggressive hostile act. I was born in Irvine. Excuse me. You know, but the thing is that Erebonia. The funny thing about Erebonia is, Erebonia is one of those places where you could see why they would be seen as the bad guys, right? Or, to be more accurate, why. Excuse me. Why Osborne would actually be seen as that. Which is funny because Osborne actually gets a mention in this game. A couple of mentions, actually, because he is actually mentioned during Olivia's Secret, which we'll get to. We'll get to. Okay, we'll get to. Anyways, because he's mentioned during the investigation of the threatening letters, and he's mentioned as there. Now, what's funny is that the army is actually using the bracers as intel, and I like that concept because it just makes so much sense, right? It's all good stuff. So that's good stuff. So to continue with Estelle's character arc, there's the idea that no one becomes great overnight because it, Estelle is effectively trying to become good, and she still feels amateurish. The funny thing about that, though, is nobody becomes great overnight, and that is so damn true. It takes effort to get that good, you know. You think Reen was a world class swordsman overnight? Oh God, no, right? It takes time. It takes effort, you know. Effort. I mean, Jesus, just look. And to be fair, Estelle really has grown even from Sky One, and even going through Sky One, you could see her growth there, right? This is also around the time where we started chilling out with Ren and trying to find her parents, only for it to be revealed that she's a member of Ouroboros. Ren, the Angel of Slaughter. Yeah, she is a complicated creature. Oh my god. Um, I'm debating whether or not I want to talk about the Ouroboros members back to back to back. Like I've already said my piece on Blue Blanc, admittedly. So, but the other ones, I'm wondering if I want to talk about them before or after. But you know, so then they go to head off to Bose. Unfortunately, though, they end up grounded because of mist. Roland is covered in mist, and so we start investigating the mist. Now, Agate continues to show that he's more and more mellowed. And Estelle which is funny because Estelle just during this chapter gets more and more distraught, especially when the Perzel family end up falling into comas because the mist starts causing everybody to fall into comas, and that includes the Purzels, and Estelle is just distraught. She's panicking, and Shara, who is also who is also looking at this like, slaps Estelle because she's panicking just as much, and she knows Estelle needs to pull herself back together because, well, simply put, Shara is in this chapter is absolutely getting all distraught, but knows that panicking is not going to help things, right? Which is funny because when it's revealed that Lucy Cola, the is blah, 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 blah. When Lucy Cola, Shara's old friend from the Harvey troupe, from the Harvey circus, is behind the mist. She reveals that she had suspicion. She had no hard proof, but she had suspicion. Now, the typical thing to do would be melodrama, right? Drama. The crap of oh, why'd you keep this from us, and blah 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 blah. Which is funny because Estelle's during this chapter is also doing the same thing. Hey, but we'll get to that in a minute. But the problem is that, but the thing is that this game has better writing. Sky One also had good writing too. But the reason why I say that this has good writing, and you can tell that just from this, is no, everybody understands because one, she didn't know for sure. Two, they trust Shara. And three, that trust is not as so easily broken by just not having spoken up about suspicions you couldn't back up. She had no evidence, and therefore she's not going to, present a theory she has no evidence for. Unfortunately, she is right, and thus they enter the mist trap, which puts them into a sleep. Now, for this, I had Chloe and Tita, and I don't remember what the others' dreams were, but Estelle's dream is the most vibrant. Dreams of when her mother was still alive. This hit. I'm just going to say this bluntly. And yet it shows the connection between Estelle and Joshua beautifully. Because Estelle goes through, and she's all good, and the illusion is playing out all nice. And effectively the idea is she could stay here forever. But eventually she's broken out of the illusion by a single song. And you know what? I'm gonna chance it. Fuck it. I'm gonna chance it. Actually, wait. I could do that on here, couldn't I? Give me a moment. I am going to pull this up. Because, obviously, it's the harmonica that frees Estelle from her prison. Or I shouldn't, prison, fantasy. From the Nexus. It frees her from the Nexus. Let's just say that. Anyways. Well, Spotify takes forever and 9 million years to load. Because it's beautiful, and she actually manages to finally play the song, excuse me, and do it well, which is a nice touch because, well, for 5 years she heard Joshua playing that song, right? Whoops. So naturally, it would be the connection to Joshua that breaks her out of it, gets her to wake up from the illusion, right? It's a nice touch, and I actually really enjoy that. That so much. So, if I can find it, because I want to play it for this section. Fuck. Come on. As I get rid of certain other ones. No, it's not Heartless Surprise Attack. Did I pass it? Dang it. Where was it? Okay, screw it. Go to album. Okay. Entry form. Instrumental version. Or oh, you know what? I think it's actually in Sky 1's soundtrack. Whoops! Forgive me, I need to find a Sky 1 song and go to that soundtrack. Well, I get rid of more songs that I don't need in here. There we go, there's Sky 1. Go to album. There we go. Now, I want to see if this will actually work. Ah, that's loud. So I'm just going to turn that down a little. But yeah, this song that I'm playing right now through OBS, and we'll see if it gets picked up, frees Estelle from the illusion. And God, is that cathartic. It's so cathartic. I'm not gonna lie. Oh. It's such a beautiful melody, and it just goes to show just how wonderful this soundtrack really is. You know? This is a 2-minute song, which, if you remember, is also the song that played just before the confession. You know, the final scene from Sky 1. It's so good. This makes so much sense, and yes, I'm doing this for a purpose. It makes so much sense that this would be the song that would break the illusion. I don't know what else to say. You know? So then the image of Lena appears. And then she agrees that she's going to leave because, well, she has to. She can't live in the fantasy. It's that simple. Oh. And I love it. I love the fact that that is a thing. Oh. So then, after she gets out of there and says goodbye to her mother, well, her illusion mother, I should clarify, she shows the others the photo, and again, to show the good writing, they don't blame her. So during this, we had seen in Ragnar the Dragon, and this is when Weissman basically takes control of Ragnar, and so the Bose chapter is literally us having to deal with that. Fun. Also, this is where Lo. This is where we really have Lo come to the forefront, and so Agate naturally tries to fight off Lo, and that goes about as well as you would expect. Mostly just because the dragon torches uh, Ravenview village, and that's kind of Agate's hometown. So, yeah, he kind of gets pissy and goes after Lo for that. Unfortunately, his sword gets broken. He gets the shit kicked out of him. Tita protects him, which is very impressive. Which is very brave of her. And then Agate's past is finally revealed. During his recovery, he tells Tita the story about Misha and how Misha died in the 100 Days War, which, for the record, is 10 years before the events of Sky 1. 10 years before Sky 1, the 100 Days War was a 3-month war that took the lives of many people, including Estelle's mother and Agate's sister. Agate has been blaming himself for Misha's loss for 10 years. That's a hell of a long time to blame yourself for something. But it may also make sense. Now, again, I'm just going to temper this by saying that no, this doesn't excuse Agate's actions in the first game. But if Agate had been kind of just somewhat as abrasive as he is here, without the "you're an amateur" and slapping Tita garbage from the first game, Agate would easily be my favorite character and have one of my favorite character arcs ever. Because oh man, he has an insane amount of good characterization here. He has so much great characterization. That it's such a good game. It's such beautifully written. It's beautiful. It's actually why Tita is my favorite character. It ended up being one of my favorite character in this game. No joke. Now Estelle, do not take that to mean that I don't like Estelle, or I don't like Shara, or I don't like Olivier. I love this cast. This cast is great. I still say Class 7 is my favorite cast, but we can get into that when we get into Cold Steel 3, which won't be next, it'll be after that. Oh, okay. No, I did have another note. It was about Kevin. It's right there. So this is where I really started running into streaming issues with Sky 2. First of all, this game hates me alt-tabbing. Well, okay, let me be more clear. It hates me alt-tabbing and trying to stream it, because if I alt-tab to go and try and deal with something in OBS, the visuals on the OBS will freeze. I hate that because it's so dumb. I don't know if that's true in the GOG version. I suppose we'll see when the Lore Runner when this game finally gets funded for a run from that. But it really just kind of pissed me off. So then we go deal with So then they go to take off to try and chase after the dragon. Which is good that Agate and Tita unfortunately have to be absent from this one, and because and because Is, well, apparently a package came in for Agate from Professor Russell. It's basically a sword upgrade that uses vibration, that basically turns his sword into a vibrating sword, and that basically allows it to have more cut power to get through the gospel. Excuse me. Which actually kind of works. So then we go deal with Ragnar, who thanks us and says he can't interfere because of ancient nonsense prophecies and nonsense. You know how it is. So then they go on a vacation to the village that I forget the name of. I should have written it down. Where Estelle and Joshua kind of had their time in the sun. It's actually a very nice thing, and all the party members are there, and I actually really like it. Even Kevin is there. Then Kurt shows up injured because they had found Ouroboros' base. Well, one of them anyway. And this is when Kevin gets to show up his skills in order to free Kurt's mind. So he tells us about the location of the base. We go there, we deal with it, and Kevin is able to free each of the other bracers of Kurt's crew, Karna, Annalise, and crap, I forgot his name. Other awesome dude, and was able to remove the brainwashing. So we fight some not Joshua's, and this leads to Estelle the gang getting knocked out, and Estelle getting captured, taken on board the Glorious, which is basically their flying fortress. So Weissman, in an attempt to stick it to Joshua or get him to rejoin, I'm not actually 100% sure on that. Weissman brings her on board, meets with her, and basically says, and basically we do the whole join the dark side, we have cookies thing. Weiss, and I have to pose a question. Okay? Do you think Weissman is either obviously I think this offer was genuine. I'll just go ahead and say that. Do you think the offer was genuine? And bonus question, if your answer is yes to you thinking the offer is genuine, do you think it's because Weissman is that arrogant or that fucking stupid? Now, granted, those two things are not mutually exclusive because arrogance can lead to stupidity, but he offers Estelle to join the dark side. I'm sorry, but this is not Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can touch her forehead, brainwash her, and be done with it. And the other thing is, too, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. This is what would happen if the writing wasn't garbage in season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's all I'm gonna say on that front. So yeah, this is when Lowe explains about Karen and the tragedy of Hommel. Karen being Joshua's sister, as Agate is not the only one who lost somebody around the time of the 100 Days War. So, the tragedy of Hommel was a mess. Let's just be blunt about it. Let me just make this as perfectly clear as I can. Erebonia basically, basically slaughtered its own citizens, disguising them as liberal troops in order to start the 100 Days War. Let's just say that as plainly as we can. And whether or not that was elements within the empire, it was empire people that caused that tragedy, and it was a massacre. They blamed the town being destroyed on a rock slide because they just wanted to sweep. Both countries basically wanted to sweep it under the rug, and that was kind of one of the conditions with the ceasefire that ended the 100 Days War. The problem is that Hummel is a dark stain on Erebonia's past, and you need to look no further than three people: Lo, Joshua, and a character that we won't be seeing until Cold Steel 3, Ash Carbide. Yeah. So then Lo basically says it's pointless to escape, and Estelle basically says, nuts to that, I'm getting the hell out of here. And so then Joshua shows back up finally. Now, we've been able to play as Joshua a couple of times, but this is where he returns and he joins the party. Can I just say I love the scenes where, with Joshua's return, they're beautiful. And this is where the romance really gets cemented. Now, I don't remember if I talked about this at the end of my Sky 1 video, but there is no avoiding it, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But we gotta talk about the relationship between Estelle and Joshua. The reason I find this one to work is Joshua is effectively... It's easy both mentally and the way they treat Estelle and Joshua's relation. Everybody else treats Estelle and Joshua's relationship, except for Estelle and Sky 1, to see Estelle and Joshua as a couple, right? Because Estelle and Joshua they're close. They're very close. They care about each other. And the connection is just so strong there that, to be honest with you, to both of them, it would feel wrong to stay siblings. I'm pretty sure they will basically just keep going with that throughout the entire... I don't know if they keep going through with that analogy in the Crossbell games. I guess we will see in about a year from now, but it, that is not their relationship. Brother and sister is not their relationship. They are a couple. You know? By the end of the game, Estelle and Joshua are calling themselves boyfriend and girlfriend. Effectively. Right? Like, to the point where Joshua might as well put a freaking ring on that finger, because they are effectively married as far as their names are concerned. It's actually poetic and beautiful, in my opinion, and it really, really works with that beach scene. It was beautiful. It was touching. I don't think I teared up at it, but maybe I did. So then Ouroboros starts activating the towers. So we go and deal with each one in turn. Blue Blanc, whose fight sucks, and then he just retreats. There's not much to say there. Then there's Walter and Zinn, and who try to sell their beef. And then Walter just says, yeah, next time we meet, I will explain why I killed our master. Then there's the confrontation between Shara and Lucy Hola. Shara, of course, being told that, come find me if you want to know why, why I killed your father figure. And then this is where Ren basically starts having conflicting emotions when it comes to Estelle, because Ren sees Estelle's actions as betrayal, when in reality, she's not betraying Ren, she's trying to save Ren. And yeah, there is a difference. There's a huge difference. Then Chapter 8 happens. And the kingdom-wide 8 orbital shutdown happens, and we have to have an accessory called the zero field generator or whatever. Yeah, it's zero field generator. This basically allows you to use arts, because otherwise you can't use arts throughout the entire thing. Yeah, I skipped through like all of the side quests in this chapter because I was like, fuck that. Man, fighting things in this chapter is just yikes. Also, monsters that I am curb stomping keep fighting me. Why can't they be like the monsters in Erebonia when you're too high level? They'll run away like, hey, like run away. Ugh, whatever. So yeah, I don't have anything to say about Chapter 8 except for two, technically, things. Because you see, the Aurora shows up, the floating city shows up, liberal arc, and then Olivier shows up and reveals his secret, his real identity, if you so to speak. I think I mentioned it back in Sky 1. If you know anything about the Vanders, then you know who Olivier is. And yes, his real name, as confirmed by apparently Sky 3 and the Cold Steel games, is Prince Olivert Rese Arnor. Now, he plays dumb a little bit when Estelle calls him out on all this crap. Like, what the hell's going on, Olivier? And it's like, I don't believe we've met. And then Estelle's just like, playing dumb, huh? Ugh, fine, whatever. So then they do the negotiation tactic. And I love the solution that they come up with, where basically Oliver is going to observe the fall of the great city, and he's doing so effectively to try and he's doing all of this effectively to stonewall Osborn, and it is glorious. It's brilliant. Of course, this means he has to play dumb because we can't. He has to pretend like hasn't been palling around with us very much. But it works to his advantage because, well, he's been planning for this for a while. And that just makes sense, doesn't it? I imagine this was a hell of a twist for people back in the day. Of course, because I played the Cold Steel games before getting to the end of Sky 1 and playing Sky 2. This didn't catch me off guard. It's the one thing I knew was coming. So then we have fly up to the thing, and the audio balance on the pre-rendered scenes are god awful. God, that hurt. That was so stupid. Ugh. So then we go rescue the Capuas, who crash land on Liberal Arc. Because, because they wanted to go search for treasure, and of course because of the nature of the thing, well, it zaps their engines of power. because of the orbment system. So then Julia and Mueller join as full party members. Now Julia joins in an earlier fight. Right. I haven't mentioned the special ops dudes, but I gotta be honest with you, the special ops dudes who's showing up as cavalry when Ouroboros attacks Grand Seal just before the Flying Fortress thing. I mean, which I didn't mention because there's not much to say there. That was a nice touch. I admit that. But I just don't have anything to say about it. But Julia and Mueller are awesome as they become basically party members at that point. Party members that I will have to use at some point now that I actually have on camera the thing. So then we have our rematches against the Ouroboros members. Blue Blanc. We actually damage his mask, funny enough, which is awesome. Then we deal with his Walter. So Zin and Walter have their scuffle. Zin basically barely wins. And not and because but if if Walter had stuck with the course and wasn't doubting himself, he would have won. Or Zin would have lost. I mean, is what I mean by that. Walter would have won. Zin would have lost. Decent fights, both for Blue Blanc and for Walter. Then Lucy Cola's fight. Oh, that fight was just crap. And then Lucy Cola commits suicide. There we go, we're demonetized. That fight can go to hell. That fight can just go to hell. Not to mention that this is where the tech issues really started hitting me the hardest with Ren, with the second thing. I haven't mentioned anything about the Liberal arc, and I'm jumping straight to Praxis Tower. That's because I don't have anything to say, really. I mean, yeah, we go and we rescue the Kapuas. We go on board the thing. The thing is that I just don't have anything to say about the Kapuas. They're there. They're kind of useful. Moving on. So then the game just really starts giving me tech issues. And then we deal with Low. Oh my god. Oh my god. So I'm actually glad I had a little bit of an audience there. Oh my god. Ugh. Low was easily the most aggravating fight in the game. It took me multiple retries. It took me multiple tries to get it. Ugh. And the only reason and the stream I actually ran into the reason I mentioned the tech issues is because the tech issues also showed up on low because I was dumb enough to click over to my OBS on my second monitor the second time I screwed it up. So I started narrating through the thing, and I had to go through a bunch of stuff and an entire battle before I could finally fix it. And I was like, oh my god. Yeah. Because Josh and so yeah, the tech issues really hit me with low. Ren and low. Ugh, it was so bad. So then Joshua becomes possessed. Because he's just faking it, basically. And then we find out Weissman's aim. He is basically... See, the point is that he's so egotistical that he basically claims that humanity... Excuse me. That humanity needs the auroral because Because humanity will just continue the cycle of war and hatred. But Estelle points out that no, what we need to do is to come together. War is the unfortunate byproduct of a lack of trust, Weissman. That's the entire point. It's actually why Joshua put his faith in Kevin, which allowed him to break free. And allowed us to finally defeat Weissman once and for all. Which, funny enough, the one that actually gets the kill on him is Kevin. Because remember, he's Grolschritter, and thus he's sent to kill Weissman. So then everyone escapes. And Estelle and Joshua, basically, we have to have the whole did they live or did they die thing with the escape. Which leads to Estelle and Joshua being saved by Cassius again. Although I will say it was a very touching scene, and if they had actually pulled the trigger and killed Estelle and Joshua right there, I would have been satisfied with that. I absolutely would have been satisfied. But no, Ragnar's contract is fulfilled, and so Cassius gets to surprise us again. Which is funny, because Shara is so against leaving Estelle and Joshua because how the hell is she going to face Cassius in saying that he left his children behind? Yeah. So then Estelle and Joshua go on a journey for Joshua to atone for his sins, and they're going to do so together. Hopefully to reunite with Ren, which apparently they do at earliest in Sky 3. That's all I got. This is a fantastic game. I love every asset. I love so much about this game. Really, the stream is all I need to say about it because I go more into depth into the stream, more so than this video did. But man, am I looking forward to Sky 3. Just not right now because oh my god, Sky 3. Going through another Legend of Hero Trails game. Maybe not right now. Maybe I'll stream some lighter stuff, and I also kind of need to get some hard drive space, which means getting a external hard drive that I don't attach to my PS4 this time. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for me. So, yeah, Sky 2, ladies and gentlemen, an enjoyable game that I'm glad I played. I'll see you guys next time. For the next video might take me a while, but it may or may not be Sky 3. And I'm sorry, Naxi, but I'm still not emulating the goddamn. I'm still not doing the patch for the crossbell games. I will stick to my guns on the PS4 versions. Damn it. Anyways, until next time, guys, Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one.